Welcome back to another week of A Journey in Boots from Trauma to Triumph. I'm your co-host, Dorothy Odell. Normally, we have the amazing Dr. J. Royster on, but it is her birthday, so shout out to Dr. J. And she decided to take the night off. So tonight, we have one of my favorite people on the planet, Marine veteran Michael Parker. Welcome, Michael.
Hey, glad to be here, and glad that I'm one of your favorite people. That's a high category to be in.
That is, there's the list is getting shorter by the day, but, or by the week. No, I'm just kidding. But Michael's been on a couple of my other shows, and Michael and I actually are in Angels 14 together. I've talked about Angels 14 a lot on the show. It's a veteran organization helping veterans with camaraderie, connection, and just being there for each other. It's like a brother and sisterhood should be. But Michael, before we bring our amazing guest on, I want you to share a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, so I do a lot. Pretty much everything I do revolves around helping people, especially veterans and first responders. I started Second Chance Rehabilitation Ranch back in 2019, kind of born out of my struggles with mental health. I do camping retreats and crisis intervention coaching for veterans and first responders through that. Um, I started a dog training business with the missus about 8 months ago. So I have that as well. And then on the side, I also help a dear veteran and law enforcement friend of mine do coaching or not coaching, instructing for different LA departments around veteran related topics.
Cool. Well, I'm super excited to have you on as co-host. Michael, I know once upon a time had his own podcast. I think you still do it occasionally. So it's an honor to have somebody on here that's seasoned and can help. So for those of you, if this is the first time you've tuned in, we usually bring on either a veteran or first responder, have them share their story before service, during service, and then after service. And usually they're still in some kind of service because that's what they do. So tonight I have the distinct pleasure of bringing Jane Babcock to this show. Jane served 21 and a half years in the U.S. Army Reserve, 8.5 AD on 4DD. I don't know what the heck that is.
Active duty.
Yep.
Active duty.
Why? I kept going home and they kept calling me back. So,
all right. So, you know what? After this lady has spent a lot of time giving her time up for her country. So thank you for being here. I don't like reading bios because I want people to know who the person is. We could put whatever in a bio, but I really want people to know the real person. So Jane, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. I know Michael is going to be transitioning into the house, so I don't know when he's going to be doing that. So if he disappears for a minute, he'll be right back. But with that, Jane, so tell us a little bit, why the military?
Well, my family history has 6 out of 7 generations in the Army. So I really didn't have a choice of branch. I graduated high school in 1977. Was going to save money and then go to school when I knew what I wanted to study. Mm-hmm. At 23, I went, I've always enjoyed tinkering, so maybe these computer things that they're doing now will be interesting. So I was going to go to school to learn computer repair, and I realized I had no money in the savings account. So I said, who can I get to pay for my schooling and my bills while I'm going to school? So took the ASVAB. The recruiter said, pick whatever you want as long as it's not male restricted, because there was a lot of male jobs in the military then. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, what's your longest electronic school? And he said, well, it's this one. And I went, okay. He said, but it's 6 months until you can leave for basic training. And I was like, ooh, that gives me too much time to chicken out. Mm-hmm. So then I said, okay, what's the next one? And he said, well, this one, and it's two months. And I said, oh, good. I'll work for a month and I'll take a month off. And that's how I became a crypto tech. I was one of the last. There was 2 more iterations that went through after me that were full maintenance. So it took me an entire year from basic training and AIT to get done with AIT
Wow.
because we had to go through all this precision soldering courses and all this stuff. So that's what I did. That's what I chose.
That's so funny because half the time when I ask our veterans, what made you decide to join the military? Free education, right? But the free education is not free. Let's
No.
be real. It is not free. You basically sign your name on a dotted line to give your life away to your country, and so what perceived is to be free is technically not. So 21 years. What would you say during those 21 years? Like, what would you say was your biggest moment?
I went to Australian rappelling course on Jeju-do Island, just off the southern part of Korea.
Mm-hmm.
And standing at that 300-foot cliff and looking over and going, okay, you're going to run down this face forward. Please don't let me face plant. And then you run all the way down, and then, well, part of the way down, about 2/3 of the way, and then you hit an overhang. So you have to kind of free fall the last part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to sit on the ground and count off to 10 as loudly as you can, because as the instructor says, it's time for your brain to catch up with your ass. Because all you did for 300 feet was inhale. So you got such an oxygen high going. That was probably my funnest, most challenging time.
I wrote that down. Your brain to catch up with your ass. I love that. I love those phrases. I'm gonna have to use that as a catchphrase. I absolutely love that story.
Yeah, sometimes we just get going so fast that we get ahead of our own feet, and you got to stop and let things catch up sometimes.
Right. So 21 years, I imagine you've seen a lot in your career, in your military career.
Fortunately, some of the stuff was, I learned more about how incorrect the military was after I got out and I became a county veteran service officer.
Mm-hmm.
I was injured in 2003 out at the High Tech in California. We were leaving for Afghanistan in 2004. And I didn't realize at the time of the injuries that I had also blown out a disc in my neck. But I knew that the entire side of my face and shoulder and arm were all purple. Ooh. And I fractured the head of the bone in your arm, mm-hmm. and torn up 2 tendons and a rotator cuff, but I didn't realize I'd blown out a disc. So when a few months later, I had to walk in and say, hey, this neurosurgeon wants to slit my throat, take out this disc, put in a dead guy's disc, and then some scaffolding. They just went, hey, we don't have time for you. You got 21 plus. Here you are. You're now a part of the Army Retired Reserves. Wow. See you when we get back. Oh, if your surgery goes well and you want to join us, then you have to go through the physical and you can join us. And I'm like, okay. Nobody said VA. Nobody said medical board. They didn't offer me even an exit exam, even though I was standing there stoned off my butt on Vicodin.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And so that's what got you into what you're doing today.
Yeah. 4 years later, when I found out, I went, oh, look at this ad for a county veteran service officer. What do they do? Checked it out, and I went, I should have been going to the VA.
So wait a minute. Anybody that I've talked to so far, you're the first one, before they kick you out or retire you or whatever, I thought you're supposed to have this 2-week course and they go through stuff with you, give you all that. Did you not get that?
Oh, no. Reservists very seldom get it. But in 2004, they didn't have those classes. And as a reservist, even less chance of getting it. And even today, there's a lot of active duty guys. They're on mission. They don't have time to stop and go attend a class. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, there's a lot of guys and gals that come out that haven't started any process other than turning in their gear and and the room key. That's about it.
Right. Right. Welcome back, Michael. Glad to have you back. If you have any questions for Jane, just step in,
Yeah.
or
So
any comments.
yeah, actually, I was going to ask on that since you spent so long as a county veteran service officer. There we go. Um, and obviously, like you joined or you got out in that time before they had like TAPS, which is Transition Assistance Program. Um, I have buddies that got out in the '90s, and it's kind of similar. They just hand you the DD 214, you go
Yep.
about your way. I got out in 2015, and there was the class like she's talking about, TAPS. Um, I guess my question for you is working with veterans that have transitioned out and earlier. Do you think it helps having that transition, or what can they do
Yes.
to improve it?
Oh gosh, there's a lot they could do. um, it's great that they have it though, because that at least puts the VA in their mind. I stepped out. I didn't even think about VA. I thought that was only for combat guys. I myself had not been to combat, but I had gotten activated to go to the Pentagon during Desert Storm and things like this. So even though I served, quote, during wartime, I didn't serve overseas during wartime. So I had no clue. And I was part of a tiny little detachment in Milwaukee. We didn't even have a first sergeant slot. And our UA was a wonderful guy, cared a lot about us. But 3 years before that, he had been in logistics, and his job was loading choo-choo trains and driving them as a military guy. So he didn't know what to do with a broken soldier. He just assumed, oh, you got 21 plus sign here, you're in the retired reserves. Bye. Your orders will come in the mail 9 months later.
Wow.
I didn't even get a retirement flag. So yeah. But TAPS is good in that it gets that thought going, and hopefully they're pushing a lot to get to your county veteran service officer, your state veteran service officer. 32 states mandate that every county have a veterans office. And they have to be manned by people that go through the training, accreditation, sign an ethics statement that they will not charge a veteran for their services or their family members, and that they then go to training every year. So they're always up on the latest and greatest. As a CVSO, we had a national forum. I could go and post things up there like, hey guys, guess what? I figured out how to change a death certificate that's 10 years old. And
Wow.
they come back with things like, why would you change a 10-year-old death certificate? So I get this widower DIC, and they could post stuff. When I was a new person, I could post stuff out there about, okay, I just had this meeting with this veteran, blah, blah, blah. And they could come back and say, oh, be sure and ask him this question, and do your research on that chemical that he used in his MOS. Because maybe his cancer isn't on the presumptive list, but the chemicals he used in service for his job may have caused it. So they coached me, and as I got more mature in my job, I was able to put things up there for them.
I love that. There's a thought as you guys were speaking. Too bad the military wouldn't hire veterans to come back and teach that transition course, or even teach the government what they need to do.
Well,
you don't want to go down that road, Dorothy. You don't want to go down that road.
Most of the transition teachers are former military.
Yeah, well, then that's good.
Because they can relate to, and they know how to speak the language, and they know how to swear in 3 languages. So we can get away with more. But most of them are military, because unfortunately a lot of them came through either no transition training at the time they left service, or it was so inadequate in the beginning that they had all sorts of bumps in the road. Now I've got half a dozen transition instructors that will refer people to me and say, look, you need to talk to this lady because she's going to teach you exactly what you need to know. And transition assistance is a limited class. So they talk about VA healthcare. But they don't tell our females that they can have their babies at a VA hospital. And if they're too far away from the VA hospital, that they can go to the local hospital and have VA pay for it. And they don't mention that, once you're in VA healthcare, you can purchase low-cost dental insurance through Delta Dental or MetLife Dental because they have an agreement with the VA to give low-cost family dental. Wow. So all those little hidden secrets don't get told in TAPS. And TAPS, I still don't think they teach anything about wartime veterans pension. Michael, what do you know about the wartime veterans and surviving spouses pension?
Honestly, I don't. So my TAPS, there's only two things I remember. It was the contact information for because I was in San Diego, was for the San Diego VA, and the only other thing I remember from it is how to write a basic resume. So I really didn't pay a whole lot of attention because all of it was like around the San Diego VA, and from what they told us as well, the VAs don't really talk to each other adequate, on
you're
the
right. They
appropriate
don't
level.
adequately
So,
tell. Yeah.
yeah.
And unfortunately, the VA computer system still does not talk nationwide.
What?
Now, got to remember when computers were first starting, it was hard to get computers in the same room to talk to each other. So as they slowly developed, everything went onto a floppy disk. And you took it over to the next guy's computer to bring it up. So, see, here's the report. So as they combined computers and get local area networks, then wide area networks, and now we got to get this wide area network to work with the internet and talk all across the country. And the guy in Seattle, Washington that's doing the programming puts the data information for your last name on line 17 in the code, but the guy in Florida doing his networks coding is putting it on line 27. So now
it should all be one code.
Yeah, so now you're trying to get them to talk to each other. And I think that's where one of the big failures in VA is they keep trying to get these 5 networks that they have now to merge into each other. But it's like trying to get someone who speaks Hunan Chinese to understand Mandarin Chinese. Most of it is the same, but there's just enough words that you could be insulting somebody when you're just asking them to have a nice day.
Right.
But instead of just saying, look, let's build a standalone system and merge the data into it, train everybody on it, and then kill the other 5, the VA just keeps dumping billions and billions and billions into it and sending it out for contract every couple of years. And, this guy bid less than the guy that was working on it for the last 4 years, so we'll go with the cheaper guy. But now he's got to spend a year to a year and a half just figuring out what's already there before he can try to begin designing the fixes. So we really do shoot ourselves in the foot in the government that way.
Right.
If I live in Wisconsin, if I go to Florida right now and I get hurt and I walk into a VA, they're going to go, oh, hold on a minute. We got to call up to Milwaukee and get a download to see your medical information.
I actually ran into that. Like my stuff's out of Arkansas, and I moved up here to Illinois, and I had to go to the hospital, and they were like, they called over to the VA, and the VA is like, he's not in the system. Are you sure he's a veteran? I'm like, yeah, I'm a veteran. Like, but my stuff's not. So like, and it doesn't. Yeah, they don't talk, and literally, it's not even that far away. But
yeah, and they don't always follow the same rules. I had a family down in Texas. They called me up. I'd helped the son get his benefits, and his father-in-law was a Vietnam Agent Orange, dying of Parkinson's, and for 3 years he'd been trying to get into the VA. Now, granted, he had an other than honorable discharge, But the VA regulations state that if it's a presumptive illness, or you can prove that the injury or illness happened in service, you can get the medical care. You have to adjudicate your DD 214, and then you have to fight to get it amended if you're going to get the compensation. But in this veteran's case, he just wanted the medical care because he and his wife had run out of money.
Mm-hmm.
And the lady in Texas, the son put me on a three-way call with her, and she kept saying, nope, we don't treat other than honorables. And I go, ma'am, here's the regulation, 30th CFR, chapter this, da-da-da-da. Please read it with me. And she said, nope, that's not how we do it in Texas.
Wow.
So I got a hold of a friend of mine who worked in the secretary's office, and I said, texted him real quick, and I said, this is the problem. And about half an hour later, he texted back, not a problem, handing it off to so-and-so. 2 hours later, they called my veteran and said, when would you like your first appointment?
Wow.
Isn't it sad that you have to call in the boss's assistant to get you to follow regulation? But if people don't know the regulations, they can get into a pissing match.
Mm-hmm.
Well, knowing the regulations and most good VSOs, yes, there's the bottom 10% of the class. And yes, there's the top 10% that are just waiting for their retirement.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't know the rules, you can't begin to fight them. So.
And Jane has a lot of amazing resources. Like she is a walking encyclopedia for veterans, I swear. Every time I talk to you,
go-to.
Yeah. It's just, there's another guy that was on our show, Larry Roberts. He's from the American Legion, and I don't know. Please forgive me if I didn't connect you, Jane. I think I said I was going to, and the last 3 weeks have just been insane here. But I will connect you because he I think with his resources and your resources, you guys could rule the world. Like, no doubt about it.
Well, for me, the next goal, because I am doing podcasts, I am doing 2 to 6 podcasts a month across the country, which is great. But it doesn't reach that 85-year-old farmer in the middle of nowhere. It doesn't reach the widow that's going to the senior center for her friends. I just recently pitched PBS and Wisconsin Public Radio, and I'm hoping, I've given them all the information and the outline and stuff like that. So I'm hoping that they'll come through where I'll be able to reach at least all the Wisconsin ones. Because where do the older veterans listen? I get in my car. I don't consider myself old, but I am over 65. But I get in my car, and the only station that I listen to is Wisconsin Public Radio. And one of my favorite television stations is PBS. So if I can get this information on those stations, I've done a podcast with ABC Eye on Veterans, and they actually stripped the audio and put it out on the Armed Forces Network, which is great for the young guys, for the people that are still serving or whatever. It's not reaching the population that has no clue what the VA is about, other than, there's a clinic 2 counties over.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean my cancer is because I was exposed to Agent Orange? I've got frostbite from being in Korea, and all I want to know is, will the VA give me a scooter if I go in? I actually had to help that gentleman. He was Army. He was in a field hospital. He'd been shot, and the village was overrun, and so was the field hospital, and he was stuck in the frozen rubble for a day and a half. And a wonderful Marine group came in and pulled all these guys out and warmed them back up and got them back to their units. Well, he had no proof of being shot, much less having frostbite. So I had to go out on the internet and find all these Marine units because he could remember the patch and he could remember the village and all this other stuff. And I searched all these different things, posted sign, messages saying, I'm a CVSO working with Jim so-and-so. Do you remember the events in this field hospital in this valley in Korea? And 6 months later, I get a phone call. I think I'm one of the Marines you're looking for. So, and he was in touch with some of the other guys. So he actually got 4 of the guys to write letters talking about Jim and what they had seen and how bad his feet were and stuff like that. So my guy, never having stepped in VA, was 100% service connected, because at that point his frostbite was up past his knees, so he could barely walk.
My gosh.
But you're going to tell an 85-year-old veteran to go on the internet and find that?
No, they don't have a first clue
No.
about the internet.
Yeah. And where I live, we have places where you can't get it. I have places where I get in my car on my way to my sister's house. It's a 3-hour drive. For an hour and a half, I have no cell service.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So
she's like the Nancy Drew of the VA.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite book series when I was a kid. But, our federal government, and with all this stuff that's going on now, yes, we want to be more efficient. Yes, we want to use technology, but we're leaving behind 40% of the population.
Mm-hmm.
And if the veteran doesn't know, if his ischemic heart disease wasn't on the list when he died, why would his widow think anything of it 3 years later?
Mm-hmm. So I have to ask you a question, because I've seen this on social media. I don't frequent TikTok a lot, but I saw this TikTok video where this widow of a veteran, I don't know what service her husband was in. I don't remember. This was a while that I watched this, but she got, I think it was $500 to $600 a month from one of his pensions, and they were demanding that the government, the military, was demanding that she write down everything she spent that $600 on. Is that true? Is that shit really happening?
Okay. Well, if it's the wartime veterans and surviving spouses pension, it's based on an income. And what they do is they take the household income and they subtract off all the medical expenses, the Medicare, the supplemental insurance, the dental bills, the new glasses they bought the year before, all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And then they go, okay, now we take that from your income. You're living on this much money, which is this far below poverty. We're going to take that and divide it by 12 and give you a piece of it every month. Mm-hmm. So if your medical bills went up, your pension will go up. If your medical bills went down, you got a good RX card or whatever, and your pharmacy's cheaper, then your pension will decrease a little. But if you're paying for in-home care services because you're very limited in your ability to get out of your house and go grocery shopping and whatnot like that, and you're getting forgetful and not taking your meds, and then you may actually qualify for an additional $300 a month under aid and attendance. Mm-hmm. But if you don't know that program exists, how do you apply for it?
Right. Got it.
And when a person goes into assisted living, that's all they have to write down on their list of expenses, because that's, $5,000 a month right there. So that takes all your income, in which case all you have to do is write down assisted living and the name of the place and everything. They may call there and say, hey, is this person a patient there? Mm-hmm. When you first apply, you actually have to get one of the forms filled out by the assisted living. Right. So, yeah, it can be.
Oh, this lady was, I think she had to be late 30s, early 40s. So it wasn't like her husband would have been in assisted living. So I don't know. Or maybe she just didn't look damn good for her age. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
they have these really stupid rules. Well, in my opinion, stupid rules. For a veteran, if they're under 65, they have to be disabled, permanently unable to work, or maintain gainful employment is what they call it. The youngest guy I helped put on the pension was 22 years old.
Wow.
He came home from the sandbox fairly unscathed. We got him a 20% rating, and off he went to his civilian job where they turned his insurance on right away. But I had enrolled him in the VA, even though he said, "Oh, I don't need that. Forget that. Somebody else needs it more than me." Well, 9 months later, his family called me from the emergency room. They said he was on his way to his new job with no insurance, and a guy pulled out of a driveway and hit my guy, and he was on a motorcycle.
Oh.
Okay. My guy is going to be mentally 12, 14 years old the rest of his life. And he had a compression injury to most of his spine. So he's very limited in his physical abilities.
Mm-hmm.
So luckily for them, I had enrolled him already. So I just called Milwaukee and said, "Hey, here he is. This is the hospital. This is the circumstance." And they looked in the computer and went, "Yeah, we see you enrolled him. Okay." They called the hospital and said, "Send us the bill."
Oh my.
Yeah. Over 2 months up here in our local hospital, most of it spent in ICU. Then they called and said, "Okay, he's stable now. He can be transported to the VA hospital and less than 2 hours from here."
Mm-hmm.
And they said, "But we don't have a bed in the spine center. Hold on to him." A week later, they called, "Okay, we got a bed for him." They sent an ambulance, picked him up, took him down there. He spent 6 or 8 months learning how to walk and take care of himself and stuff like that. But like I said, he's never going to work. As young as he was, he did not qualify for Social Security disability. He did not have 10 years of work history.
Right.
So he got supplemental income from the Social Security, which is only at that time $850 a month.
Ooh. How can you live off $850 a month?
Exactly. Well, most people in that circumstance that are receiving it, a lot of them are people that live with their families. Children that were handicapped severely before their 18th birthday and things like that. They're probably going to live with family the rest of their adult life. But in this case, his family found the lower floor of a house that was for rent just down the same block. They rented that. They had the VA put in a ramp for him and things like this. But the VA pension program says anybody that served active duty, federal duty during wartime, even if it's just one day, then they're eligible to apply for this pension. So we went $850. The pension with aid and attendance, the VA gave him $950 additional dollars.
Wow. Huh.
So, and just like Social Security, it goes up every year. So I had veterans that received $35 a month. I had widows that received the pension only for a year because they can use the funeral bill as a medical deduction the first year.
Right.
So it may be $35, but that used to be a bag of groceries. Now it's not, but
That's a gallon of milk these days. Or a
yeah,
carton
and
of
a dozen eggs.
Yeah. Eggs. I hear your eggs are like astronomical over there.
Yeah. So it helps. And like I said, as you get older and your age progresses and you end up needing more and more care, that income can go up and up and up till you hit the maximum pension. And it's not going to stop your life savings from being sucked dry eventually, but it's going to slow down. And right now they're talking about the Medicaid. Well, changes to Medicaid. Right now, as a single person, if you needed Medicaid, you have to have less than $2,000 in savings. So in the case of the VA pension, though, they'll start at $159,000. So it slows down, instead of taking $5,000 a month out of that savings account for that assisted living, now you only have to take $3,000 out. So,
Jane, I'm listening to you. You're like the encyclopedia here. Like you know everything off the top of your head for your veterans. Like I'm impressed.
I'm a geek. I read regulations. I love arguing letter of the law. Believe me, I've done that a few times. I even won one case against the state of Wisconsin. They kept trying to deny a young reserve kid that had gone off, done his active for basic and AIT. and had his DD 214. He wanted to apply for our state benefits, and they were saying, "Oh no, you have to have other than training." And I'm like, "No, because that's not how the law reads. All the other programs say active duty 90 days other than training, but our education benefit just said 90 days of active duty." And we went back and forth for about a year and a half, and finally they went, "Okay, you're right. Legally, that's how you have to interpret it." So he got his education benefits.
Heck yeah.
So
This is
Michael,
why she's my go-to for everything. If I don't know it, I know who to call.
I love that. So Jane, you've talked about a lot of other people, but this time is for you too. And I know my veterans don't like talking about themselves, and I get that. Michael's uncomfortable. I can feel the energy shift in him too, especially when I ask about him. But I I love your heart. I love your heart for helping. First of all, thank you for your service, being in the Army and things like that. And um, man, you are a wealth of knowledge, and I can see why you want to help people so badly. But let's talk a little bit about you. So you were in the Army for 21 years. You got injured. They tell you, sorry, you're done with no notice, basically. That had to have made you pissed off.
Yes, but I didn't know. I was angry only because they were telling me I had to separate from my family, the people that I worked with, that the people that had become family. Because I've been very blessed in that, even in my basic training, one of my drill instructors was younger than me because I was 23. And I stepped off the cattle car and he said, "How old are you, Private?" And I went, "23, drill sergeant." And he just looked at me. He goes, "Oh, know how to sound off. Okay." And he goes, "Your new name is Mom. Whenever there's a problem with any of the troops, I'm going to ask you to talk to them. And if it's a Army problem, send them to me. But if it's a girl problem or whatever, you take care of it." So,
And you were okay with that?
yeah, people panic and they think horrible things are about to happen because of something. I had a female that actually came up and thought she was pregnant. And I was like, "Okay, we're a month and a half into this. When was the last time you had sex?" And she was like, "I don't know, 6, 7 months ago." "Hello, girl, you're not pregnant. You're just stressed. Don't worry. Give it a couple days." She came back to me a couple days later and said, "Yeah, I'm not pregnant." So,
Oh my God. Like you would have,
yeah.
they walk among us, people. They walk among us.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. But
uh,
at the same time, because I was older, I got along well with all my senior NCOs and things like that. And I was always in a position, and I always had really caring leadership. Why are you acting that way? "Oh, you're stressed out because your dad is sick in the hospital. Well, why didn't you tell me? Go to the office and call him." Stuff like that. People that cared. And so it made it easier. And when it came to, "Hey, we've got a seat at BNOC down at Fort Knox. Anybody want to go?" "Well, you need BNOC to get to sergeant." So I'm like, "I'll go." And they're going, "You just got your E4." And I said, "I know, but if nobody else takes the slot, I'll take it." And next thing I knew, I was on my way down to Fort Knox. So it kind of comes and goes. What you're doing in the military, if you're lucky enough to have good leadership and they're taking care of you and you're doing all you can to make them proud and to get their mission met, then they'll make sure you're taken care of.
Right.
And so I was lucky. I had 5 MOSs in my 21 and a half years.
So what's an MOS? I don't know. I've never heard of that one before.
Military occupational specialty.
Yep. Yep. So, I mean,
I could see the look on Dorothy's face. I knew it was
I'm just
coming.
like clueless.
different jobs. One of them I acquired through the civilian acquired skills. They said, "Why would we send you to school to figure out how to operate a computer when you've been doing it for all these years. So they just gave me the MOS. Another one, I learned OJT because I was sitting around, I was maintenance, and we had a good maintenance system. So I'm sitting around twiddling my thumbs. And they said, well, do you want to help these guys out over here in teletype and, do communication, radio communications for Hurricane Hugo and San Francisco earthquake? And so I OJT'd that way, and they gave me the MOS. Yeah, Hurricane Hugo and San Francisco earthquake were really rewarding because we got to help so many people.
That's
Love
awesome.
it. So what would you say would be one of your traumatic moments then, if you had any? And if you're willing to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, physically traumatic was the stupid training accident out of the high tech. Emotionally traumatic, they had fragged my my reserve unit for Desert Storm. And they took my very young baby lieutenant and they threw him into a unit from Puerto Rico, which he didn't speak Spanish. So I know that they were talking smack behind his back because he was a very geeky looking kind of guy with a big heart, father of 3 girls.
Oh.
He didn't come home. So when they brought him home and they held the funeral, I went in and I said goodbye to him and I saluted him and I hugged Kate and I left because I couldn't go through that. And for me, that was really shaming because being a Catholic and not staying for his service, but they had taken a very young, very soft-hearted man and put him in a position where he couldn't function well. And it was extremely dangerous, and he did not have good leadership. There were things that he had written home to some of the guys that, his leadership should have been brought up on charges.
I'm so sorry. That is horrible.
That's human.
Inhumane.
Yeah, especially since his death could have been prevented. That's what I mean by bad leadership.
Mm-hmm.
It should never have happened.
Right.
But they were so wanting to impress their leadership that they took risks that were unnecessary.
Wow.
So if you ever happen to see, if you ever see a picture of Captain Ben Jansky, he was our baby lieutenant. Yeah. So.
Wow. That is heartbreaking, when you hear these stories, especially something that could have been prevented. It's one of those things that now I see why you really want to help the veterans, because for those that you couldn't help in service, now helping outside, outside of your time in service. So, wow.
But at least she got her benefits. The kids and her were taken care of. They got their insurance. They had the Chapter 35 for education, all that stuff. What most people don't know is those benefits have limitations in that, just like if the veteran was Vietnam, Agent Orange, came home and died of Parkinson's, and we service connected, and the spouse gets her DIC. If she remarries before the age of 57, she loses that benefit. If she waits and remarries after that, she keeps it. Or if she remarried and lost that benefit and now her second marriage is over, whether it's divorce or death, she can go back to that benefit. But 99% of the widows out there, if you ask them, can you reinstate DIC? Can you reinstate War Veterans Pension? And for the widows, there are no age or health limitations when it comes to pension. It's strictly what's your income, what's your medical outgo. Okay, You could be 34 years old and receiving pension. You can be 94 and receiving pension. So
Yeah.
it was always thought that the spouse was, when these programs were created, the spouse was a stay-at-home mom and this, that, and the next thing, and didn't have a career and maybe have children in the house. So that's when they created it. There was no definition of disability and or age limitation for the spouses. What they weren't prepared for is the number of men that are spouses, because my husband is my spouse.
Mm-hmm.
He was my stay-at-home potty train the kids.
Right. So we've talked about the trauma. So let's talk about the triumph. So what would you be your greatest triumph?
Before I went in service, I talked to my dad. He served in World War II, and he did 4 years, and he made corporal. So before I left, I made a bet with him. Since I was going for 4 years, I would outrank him before I got done. And at 3 years and 3 months, I got to call him and go, "This is Sergeant Cook, Corporal Cook. I outrank you." Click.
I freaking love it.
I always told my dad the same. So I promoted. He retired from the Army last year or a year and a half ago, and I got to pin him staff sergeant in Germany. And I said, one day I'm going to outrank you. And then he decided to go warrant officer. So the only way I was going to outrank him was if I went to OCS, which I didn't do. So I never got that pleasure of making that phone call or getting him outranking him. But
Well, my second best moment was when I got my 7, because my dad was there to pin me. So that was the second best. But believe me, every time I went home on leave during my first contract, he always took me down to the Elks Club or the Kiwanis Club and, hey guys, meet my daughter. She's in the Army. She got this award. She got this promotion, whatever. Well, that time, I don't remember leaving the club. All I know is I was really sick for about 2.5 days.
Love it. All right, Michael, you said you have a question.
Yeah, so I want to back up to talking about your young LT that was killed, and having been in a similar situation where a good buddy of mine was killed in my opinion, off of what I know, it was an avoidable accident, right? He's killed in a helicopter crash. They said it was mechanical error. It's really pilot error is what it boils down to. But I kind of know what it was like to go through that situation. But I want to, if you would share your experience of, how that feeling, how you felt emotionally, mentally with that situation, and then more so how you were able to work through that and overcome, or have you worked through those emotions?
Well, at the time, it made me feel very small and very weak. And as you know, people in uniform don't accept weakness. So it took me a long time to accept the fact that I myself was human. Okay. And that the people that had committed it boils down to committing a crime because of what they did. I have to leave that up to them being human, and that eventually one day we all stand on the same scale, and they will be found wanting if they haven't accepted their own mistakes. So for me, and like when I do every year, I go out at Memorial Day with the local guys and do the flags. The Saturday before Memorial Day, we mark all the flags, all the graves out in our local cemeteries and stuff like that. We put up our flags. And I always talk to Ben. And there are certain headstones in the cemetery. We have a 19-year-old from Vietnam.
Wow.
And I taught my children to look at the headstones, say thank you for your service to, Daniel or whoever's there, and to look at those dates. Because, now my kids are in their 30s. And so they need to understand just, when they were first starting to do this in their junior high and high school years, they needed to understand that these were kids that weren't much older than them.
Mhm.
So I'm lucky because I do have my faith. My faith helps me a lot. And my acceptance of people for who they are. But I also know that people that didn't serve, that aren't near military installations, that haven't seen a caisson go by, haven't gone out to the cemetery and put up flags, they don't know and they never will know. So I'm not going to fight them. You can't fight ignorance when it's simply lack of knowledge.
Mhm.
So learning to accept that life is what it is and moving forward. But don't ever, when you've lost somebody, don't ever let yourself lose them completely.
There's a quote
Make
about
them
that.
proud. Yeah. Make them proud of who you've become.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a quote about that. It goes, man, for the love of me, I can't remember who said it, but it says every man dies twice: the day that you die and the day that people stop speaking your name. And
Yep.
they definitely live on, through us. And exactly what you said. That was one of those hard lessons that I had to learn was, hey, because my struggle was I had never met his family, and I was out in Hawaii, and they were coming, and they wanted to meet, and I wasn't there when it happened. I wasn't on the deployment with them, and a lot of mine was that guilt that I wasn't there with them, and I guess I felt that they were gonna hold that against me. And a good friend of mine who saw a lot of combat was like, buddy, they want to connect with you so they can connect with their son.
Mm-hmm.
And it ended up being one of those most healing things. But that was the lesson that he taught me was like, like you have to live your life, and they live on through you, and you never forgetting their legacy. So
Yeah. Because they have another strong man in the world that thinks well of their son. That makes them even prouder.
Mhm.
And
yeah,
that's what you represented to them, is another person carrying their son's name with them. I think a lot of my upbringing, I don't know if you guys have ever read the Desiderata.
No.
It's been said that it's written by a monk a couple hundred years ago. And then other people say, well, that's never accredited to anyone. But the Desiderata starts out with, go placidly amid the noise and haste, and as far as possible, without surrender, be on good terms with all people. And then it goes on to talk about taking pride in your career, no matter how humble, for it is something to hold on to during bad times. And it rather lengthy, but there's so many little pieces of it that gave me life lessons.
Mhm.
So I've tried to do that with my own life, is to just not always hear the chaos around me and to listen, because I've always believed that when you're going down the path of life, sometimes the door is going to shut in front of you. But if you listen real close, usually there's a window that's opened up just behind you, and
Mhm.
you're supposed to climb out that window, because that's where the path for the next chapter starts. So never feel like you're trapped. There's always a way somewhere. It may not be where you're at now. It may not be where you think you want to go. But maybe that's how you have to get to the next place to get to the path that will lead you where you want to go.
it might not look the way you expect it to look.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Guys, that one's powerful. Like I got chills, Michael, when you said that quote. Because I have relatives that have been gone for 20, 30 years and I still talk about them. And so some people will say, well, that's, why don't you just let it be? But by talking about them, that leaves like that, their legacy lives on, right? They weren't bad people. And I just had a death a couple weeks ago, and so that brought that home. And so thank you for sharing that, because that is powerful. So if anybody, loses somebody and you're not talking about them, it's actually therapeutic. And their memory will always live on.
That's why, like you said, like Jane said, I'll go visit the cemeteries and I'll read their names out loud. I hike. For me, it's hiking. Even though I used to hike heavy. Now it gets lighter. I throw pillows in there to make it light instead of carrying all the gear and stuff. And I'll just throw a couple folded flags in my ruck. But I can carry all the names, and I carry their names. And a lot of people don't do that, so it's my way to remember. But it started out as a painful thing. The first few years it was my way of getting the pain out, and then it's like I do this every year, and this is my time to remember. And I know that hundreds of people are going to pass me while I'm out there hiking, and maybe for that fleeting second they remember what Memorial Day is about. Or they stop, even better, they stop and they ask me, and I get to share the story of all those names on my bag. And guess what? Now I just spread that person's memory. And it's the same for, like you said, Dorothy, like your loved ones. Every time you talk about them, you keep their spirit and their memory alive.
Yeah. I always believe that when you think about a person that's already gone ahead of us, and especially if you talk about them, that you bring them closer to you, and that they get a warm fuzzy just knowing that you're thinking about them. When my father passed, my sister was literally circling at the La Crosse airport, so she didn't make it to the ground before he passed. And she didn't cope with that well. If I'd just gotten on the plane earlier, if my sister had just called me earlier, we had one sister that she had known for 2 days that he was going to die, and she didn't call us until the last day. But I said, you need to find that one memory where you were with Dad and there was nobody else there, and he was totally nothing more than your dad. He was not husband to my mom. He was not dad to any of us other girls. He was strictly enthralled with you as his daughter. I said, and then when you need to, you go back to that feeling of that memory, and he will be there for you. And he will know, just as he knew when he left, that you love him. Just talk to him. So.
For that very reason, like when I have loved ones that are sick, or and they're gonna pass, and people are like, you gotta go see them, and I'm like, if I know that they're on a downcline, I'll go see them. But when it's around that time, I won't, because I don't. In my mind, I don't want that to be my last memory with them. I'd rather not, and I don't go to funerals either, because I don't want that as my last reminder of people. I want to remember, like you said, those good moments. And I remember you, like my grandpa, when he passed. I went and saw him about 8 months before he passed, or 2 months. 2 months before he passed was the last time I saw him, and he kind of looked rough then. And my boss was like, "Do you need to take off to go to the funeral?" I said, "No." It's like I saw him while he was living, and that's all I need. I don't need to go see his body in a casket. Like, he's not there anymore, so I don't need to go there. And his memory is in here and in here, and yeah.
I find that death is different for each one of us. For me, I'm a weeper. It's one of the few events and that will cause me to I don't sob and all that stuff. I just, lots of water pours down my face.
Oh, I'm an ugly crier.
But for some reason, when my dad passed, because he did not look that unhealthy. his heart gave out. So he hadn't really had enough time to physically change a great deal. And I was with him the night before, and he told me to make sure my mom went home because he knew he was leaving. And he didn't want her there to watch that. So I had to take her home. But when I got to his funeral, I had on my dress blues and all that stuff. So I had to, suck it up and be strong. And then my nephew, who had just gotten commissioned, showed up, and his uniform was naked. He was like, God, you make me look so bad. It's just like, don't worry about it. This is just my shield. This is my shield to force me to stay in control.
Mm-hmm.
I said, if I was in civilian clothes right now, I would be weeping. Mm-hmm. So we each take it differently.
Yeah.
But
it's a release. Weeping is a release. So no one should ever be ashamed of weeping, crying, sobbing, whatever you got to do. And it helps release those emotions, right?
As a big tough Marine, I will say it. Like, you have no reason not to cry. I cry during sad movies, and I will say that live so you guys can hear. I cry during sad movies, so I don't want to hear no excuses.
Good.
So Michael, I have a question, my dear, because we were planning a Memorial Day thing, and are we still doing it or no?
I don't think so. I haven't heard back from other bro. I'm gonna plan for next year though. I just had a lot going on with the new business and everything, and I haven't heard from him. And so,
well, I just want to put it on record that a Canadian was going to go to the States and plan a Memorial Day 5 to 10K ruck with my veterans, and so he can honor his buddy. Well, we could all honor his buddy, and those that have fallen. So, but stay tuned because it will happen eventually.
Yeah. I just started the new business, and it's like, if you've ever started a new business, there is a lot of work that goes into it, and it's like that can go on the back burner. I can do it by myself for one more year.
Can I make a suggestion, Dorothy?
Sure.
Your podcast closest to Memorial Day, get a VSO to talk about survivor benefits. Because really, people don't know that if you can't afford a headstone, the VA can give you one. If your veteran has been deceased and buried, you're like my father. He died. My grandfather died back in 1977. I can order the bronze marker or the little medallion that shows the branch of service to have placed on his headstone. So when people walk by, they know that's a veteran. He served in the U.S. Army. Mm-hmm. You can order those things through the VA. If a veteran is rated 0% for hearing loss, in other words, they damaged him, but not so much that it impacted his life, the spouse is entitled to a funeral stipend. And that has increased to over $975 a month.
Wow.
Or for the stipend, for the funeral and the plot. That cemeteries, state and federal VA cemeteries are available to veterans and their spouse. So if the veteran is placed in the veteran cemetery and then she passes, she can be placed right on top of him or cremated and placed on top of him or anything like that. There's so many things.
I don't mean to laugh at that. I just had this vision because my dad said, "Oh yeah, if your mom and I died together, then I want to be on top," is what he said. So I had that vision when you said that. To be clear, my dad is gone. He was gone 3 years ago. My mom's still alive, thank God. So that didn't happen. But sorry, when you said that, I had the vision, and that's why I didn't want people to think that I was just being disrespectful if they saw the smirk, because that was the thought. That's
funny. because I had similar thoughts in my head about things.
And this is
So
why
had to
Michael
let
and
you
I are
know.
brother and sister, sister, brother from another mother, because we share the same brain, which could be freaking scary.
Yeah.
I'm just glad you laughed too. I was trying to hold it in because like my brain went down that track as well, and I was like, "Be serious," but you said
Yeah.
it, so I can laugh now.
Yep. And I've had cases, one of my cases, we had a veteran pass and we couldn't find any family.
Oh,
So we got a hold of all the veteran posts in our area and they all chipped in and they paid for his cremation. And then I had him shipped out to the veteran cemetery. And they did, he had the plot and the headstone and the honors and the whole 9 yards. There's no
wow.
reason. We had a veteran exhumed because he was down in the pauper cemetery. He was from Michigan and had died over here. And they didn't, back then, they didn't identify any family for him. So they put him in a pauper's grave.
Oh,
Well, I want to say it's the VFW. They had a campaign a couple years ago where they reached out to all these funeral homes and stuff. And they found remains of veterans that were sitting on shelves for decades in some cases because nobody ever claimed them.
wow.
And then they took them to the veteran cemeteries and did their honors and placed them there and stuff like that. So there's no reason for a veteran ever to be less than honored when he's left us.
Amen.
So yeah. But that
Amen.
veteran service officer that I talked of earlier, whether it's your county, your state, a tribe, or the national veteran organizations, those are the people that do all the training to learn the stuff that I'm talking about. And they know who to call. Veterans would come into my office and we'd be talking, and all their major medical bills were because of their spouse. Well, did you know there's a program downstairs in the Department of Human Services? Or your furnace has died and you don't have the money to replace it? There's a Heat for Heroes program that will help you with the utility bill, but the Department of Human Services downstairs, based on your income, might be able to give you a free furnace. So it's not always just knowing what's available in the VA, it's what's knowing available in your entire state. Because that may be the program that gets you that new furnace.
So Jane, where can people reach you? Because you are a wealth of knowledge. I know we're past the hour, so I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Where can people reach you? Where's the best place?
Best places to reach me is LinkedIn because I get the messages all the time. I get the notifications of people reaching out to connect with me and stuff. And then I turn around and give them my What, Why, and VA 101 resource list, which is links and attachments to these various programs. So you can go and research them on your own and have that information, because I talked a lot about stuff and then people go, oh, she says something about this. So you get those links and attachments. If you have a question, message me and we could do a one-on-one and a video call very similar to this, or do a telephone call. If you have a podcast, I'd be happy to come and spread the word. Everybody always says, Jane, you ought to make your own podcast. No, I don't want just my audience. I want everybody else's audience.
That's right.
And if you're a big wig in television or whatever, or PBS or any of those things, VA does not advertise. They do not even put their federal benefits books in the lobby of their facilities. How can their medical staff learn? Much less the veteran or his spouse that's there because he's so sick.
Right.
So if they're not going to reach out to us, we have to reach out to each other. And that's what I do. I try and share the wealth of information so that people have some place to go back to look for, oh, they said something about this. There's a pension program. Maybe now my mother qualifies that my dad passed and she just spent $14,000 on his funeral. So she's going to live on diddly squat for the rest of the year.
Wow. See, she needs to get on Angels 14 to share this wealth with them as too. So Fridays at noon, Jane, we meet Mike on Michael's Zoom link. So Michael, give her the Zoom
I was
link.
about to say I can
Please do.
text you the Zoom link.
Yeah.
Yep. So if you're not on LinkedIn, you can email me at talk.veteran@gmail. And I'll share the tools with you.
There we
And
go.
once you get them, you'll have my phone number. So please be considerate. I live in the Midwest. Don't call me. Don't call me at California time at 8 o'clock at night, because by 10 o'clock I'm probably close to bed.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you so much,
Share
Jane.
that information. Thank
Yeah.
you, Dorothy. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you. Thank you for everybody that was watching tonight. Thank you, Michael, for stepping up.
Mental hug, brother.
Oh, I love you too. You guys are amazing. Any last words, Michael, before we wrap this up?
It's always a pleasure to be here. But hey, let's leave it on a really good note. So Jane, one life lesson. Biggest takeaway from the military or life, your work with veterans that you want to pass along to those listening?
Yeah. Everybody bleeds the same color.
Mm.
It doesn't matter what package we came in.
Wow.
And that's the last words. Mic drop right there.
Mic drop right there. All right, guys. We'll see you next week. Same time, same channel. Like I said, thank you for watching. Go to our YouTube channel, which is Unstoppable Overcomer. Subscribe, please. Share with your friends so we can get this message out to the world, to more people. We really appreciate you. Thanks again, Jane and Michael, for coming on tonight. And with that, be blessed and see you next week.